The sun beats down mercilessly on the red stones of the Tower of Joy, casting long shadows across the blood-soaked ground. 7 men lie dead or dying in the dust of dawn, their northern steel dark with gore. The air shimmers with heat and the metallic scent of battle's aftermath. Eddard Stark stands among the carnage, ice still gripped tight in his hands. At 20, the young Lord of Winterfell bears the weight of a war just ended, his grey eyes haunted by all he has seen. Lord Willem Dustin sprawls motionless near the tower's base, his loyal service to House Stark ended forever. Ethan Glover's sword lies broken beside his still form. Martin Cassell and Theo Wool have found their final rest beneath the Dornish sky. Sir Mark Ryswell breathes no more. Only Howland Reed remains standing among the Northmen, the small Cranagman's 3-pronged spear, slick with Kingsguard blood. Yet something has changed in this moment that should have seen only death. Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, kneels in the dust, with dawn's pale blade gleaming beside him. The legendary sword catches the sunlight like a fallen star. Blood seeps from a wound in his shoulder, where Howland's spear found its mark. But the knight lives still. His violet eyes meet Eddard's grey ones across the space between them. "Your Grace," Arthur says, his voice carrying despite his injury, "the Targaryen line is not yet extinct." Behind them, Sir Gerald Hightower and Sir Oswell Went lie dead, their white cloaks stained crimson. The Lord Commander's final stand has ended as it began, in honour and blood. They kept their vows unto death, as Kingsguard should. But Arthur Dayne has made a different choice. "I know why you came, Lord Stark," the knight continues, struggling to his feet with dawn in his hand. "Your sister." He gestures toward the tower, where cries of anguish echo from within. "She is dying. Has been since the labour began 3 days past." Howland Reed keeps his spear trained on Arthur, ready to strike again if needed. But something in the knight's words gives Eddard pause. The war is over. Robert sits the Iron Throne. The Targaryens are dead or fled. What purpose serves more bloodshed here? "Stand aside, Sir Arthur," Eddard says quietly. "I would see my sister." "As would I see the child she bears," Arthur replies. "For if I am right about whose son he is, then my duty is not yet done." The scream that echoes from the tower's height cuts through the desert air like a blade. Lyanna's voice, raised in pain and desperation. Time grows short. Howland's eyes dart between the 2 men, confusion plain on his weathered face. "Ned, what speaks he of? What child?" But Eddard is already moving toward the tower's entrance, his boots crunching on loose stone. Arthur follows, one hand pressed to his wounded shoulder, dawn's weight familiar in his other grip. The small Cranagman brings up the rear, spear still ready. The tower's interior is dim and cool after the blazing heat outside. Stone steps wind upward, and with each level they climb, Lyanna's cries grow louder. When they reach the chamber at the top, they find her upon a bed of blood and roses. Blue winter roses, the same flowers Rhaegar Targaryen placed in her lap at Harrenhal's tourney. Their petals have turned brown with age and the copper scent of childbirth, but their meaning remains clear. Lyanna Stark lies pale and spent, her dark hair matted with sweat. In her arms, she clutches a newborn babe, a son with dark hair and grey eyes that mark him as his mother's child. Yet Arthur's sharp gaze finds other features, subtler ones that speak of different blood entirely. "Ned," Lyanna whispers when she sees her brother. "You came." "I promised I would find you," he says, kneeling beside the bed. His hand finds hers, and he can feel how weak she has grown. I promised Father and Brandon I would bring you home. I am home, she says with a sad smile, here with my son. But you must promise me something else now. Her eyes drift to Arthur, who stands silent in the doorway. He knows, she says. He knows what this child means, what Rhaegar believed. Arthur steps forward then, his violet eyes fixed on the babe. The prince that was promised, he says quietly. His grace was certain of it. The comet that blazed above King's Landing on the night his first son was conceived, the prophecies in old Valyrian texts. But that child is dead, Eddard says harshly. Aegon is dead. Rhaenys is dead, murdered by the mountain in King's Landing while Robert took the throne. Which is why this one must live, Arthur replies, and why he cannot bear his true name or heritage. Robert's hatred for all things Targaryen runs too deep. If he knew. Lyanna's grip on Ned's hand tightens. Promise me, she whispers. Promise me you'll protect him. Raise him as your own. Let the world think him your bastard son, born of some war camp tryst, but never let them know the truth. The weight of her words settles on Eddard's shoulders like a burden of lead. To lie to Robert, his oldest friend, to claim another man's child as his own bastard, to deceive his new wife, Catelyn, who awaits his return with their own son at Riverrun. Yet as he looks into Lyanna's dying eyes, he sees the girl who defended Crannogman against cruel squires, who rode like the wind and feared no man, who loved a dragon prince despite all the world's disapproval. I promise, he says. Arthur Dayne has been watching this exchange in silence, but now he speaks again. And I swear to help you keep that promise, Lord Stark. My vows bound me to protect the royal family. If this child carries royal blood— Your vows bound you to die here, Howland interjects sharply, to die defending your post as your brothers did. My brothers died for a king gone mad and a prince already fallen, Arthur replies. I would live to serve a greater purpose, to ensure the blood of kings does not perish from the earth. Lyanna's breathing grows more laboured. She presses the babe into Eddard's arms, and he feels the child's warmth, sees the way his small fingers grasp at the air. So innocent, so unaware of the weight his bloodline carries. His name, Lyanna whispers. Jon, Eddard says without thinking. Jon Snow. A bastard name, a northern name, nothing that would draw attention from those who hunt Targaryen blood. Lyanna nods weakly, and for a moment her smile returns. Jon Snow, she repeats, my little wolf. Then her eyes flutter closed, and the bed of blood and roses becomes her final resting place. Arthur Dayne kneels beside the bed and places Dawn on the stone floor. I failed her, he says, failed my prince, failed my vows. But you will not fail the child, Eddard says, understanding flooding through him. You mean to come north, to help me protect him. If you will have me, my lord, I offer you my sword, my skill, and my silence. Let the world believe Arthur Dayne died here with his brothers. Let me become someone else, a knight who serves House Stark. Nothing more. Howland Reed looks between them with growing alarm. This is madness, Ned. To harbour a knight of the King's Guard, to claim this child as your own, to keep a promise to my dying sister, Eddard corrects, and to save an innocent life from Robert's vengeance. He looks down at the babe in his arms, at the dark hair and grey eyes that mark him as a Stark. Yet somewhere beneath that familiar appearance lies the blood of dragons, the heritage of kings, a dangerous legacy that must remain hidden if the child is to survive. Then it's settled, Arthur says, rising to his feet. We three are the only ones who know the truth. and we three shall guard that secret with our lives." Outside, the sun continues to beat down on the red stones of dawn. But within the Tower of Joy, 3 men make a pact that will change the fate of the 7 kingdoms. A bastard is born, a knight abandons his post, a lord takes on a burden he will carry for the rest of his days, and in the distance, the road north beckons. The silence in the Tower of Joy's highest chamber weighs heavy as death itself. Lyanna Stark lies still upon her bed of blood and roses, her face peaceful in a way it had not been for days. The babe in Eddard's arms shifts restlessly, tiny fists grasping at the air, unaware that his world has changed forever. Howland Reed stands by the narrow window, his weathered face grim, as he watches the sun sink toward the western mountains. "We should bury her properly, Ned. She deserves that much." "She does," Eddard agrees softly, his grey eyes never leaving his sister's face. "But first we need to decide what comes next. For all of us." Arthur Dayne leans heavily against the stone wall, his wounded shoulder bound with torn cloth from a white cloak. Dawn rests across his knees, the pale blade catching the last light of day. "What comes next has already been decided, Lord Stark. The moment you accepted that child as your bastard son." "Jon Snow," Eddard says, as if speaking the name aloud might make it more real. "My son, born of some tavern wench during the war. That's the story the realm will hear." "And what of the truth?" Howland asks, turning from the window. "What of who he really is?" Arthur's violet eyes fix on the Crannog man. "The truth is dangerous, more dangerous than Robert's warhammer or Tywin Lannister's gold. If Robert Baratheon ever learns that Rhaegar's bloodline continues—" "He'll kill the boy," Eddard finishes, without hesitation. He spoke often enough of his hatred for all things Targaryen during the war, said he'd see every last one of them dead. The babe whimpers, and Eddard rocks him gently. Such a small thing to carry the weight of a royal bloodline. Jon's dark hair and grey eyes mark him clearly as his mother's son, but Arthur sees deeper truths hidden beneath that northern facade. "There's more you should know," Arthur says quietly, "about why Prince Rhaegar believed this child matters so greatly." Howland frowns. "What speaks you of? The boy is Lyanna's son. That should be enough." "Not if he carries dragon's blood," Arthur replies. "Prince Rhaegar was convinced his children would fulfill an ancient prophecy. When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt." He believed his firstborn, little Aegon, was the prince that was promised. Eddard's jaw tightens. Aegon is dead, murdered in his cradle by Sir Gregor Clegane while the city burned. "Which is why this one matters even more," Arthur says, gesturing toward Jon. "A comet blazed above King's Landing on the night Aegon was conceived. Rhaegar was certain that was the bleeding star from the prophecy. But prophecies are tricky things, Lord Stark. Sometimes they speak of multiple possibilities." The knight shifts against the wall, pain flickering across his face. "Before he rode north to the Trident, Prince Rhaegar told me he believed the dragon must have 3 heads. 3 children to fulfill the ancient promise. Aegon was the first. Rhaenys was the second. And this boy is my bastard," Eddard says firmly. "Nothing more." "To the world, yes," Arthur agrees. "But prophecy cares little for the names men give children. If Prince Rhaegar was right, if this child carries the blood needed to stand against the darkness to come, then my oath binds me to protect him. Not as Arthur Dayne of Starfall, but as a sword sworn to House Stark." Howland stares between them. "You're both speaking madness. prophecies and promised princes. These are stories for septons and maesters. Stories that got my sister killed, Eddard says bitterly. Rhaegar filled her head with tales of destiny and dragon blood. Now she's dead, and I'm left to raise a child that might bring war to my doorstep. Arthur struggles to his feet, using Dawn as a crutch. Then let me help you bear that burden, my lord. I failed to protect his mother. Let me not fail to protect him. The offer hangs in the air between them. Outside, the first stars appear in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls lonely across the desert stones. Robert will want your head, Eddard warns. When word reaches him that you survived, he'll demand justice for the men you killed. Then let Arthur Dayne remain dead, the knight replies. Let him lie buried with his brothers beneath these red stones. I'll take a new name, serve as a simple knight in your household. Who looks too closely at a lord's household guard? Eddard considers this as he walks to where Lyanna lies. His sister's face is serene now. All pain fled. She looks younger somehow, like the girl who used to race him through Winterfell's courtyards on summer afternoons. She made me promise, he says finally, to protect him, to raise him as my own. And I swear to help you keep that promise, Arthur says. On my honor as a knight, on the memory of my prince, on the hope that her sacrifice was not in vain. Howland sighs deeply. If you mean to do this thing, then it must be done properly. No half measures, no room for doubt. The story must be seamless. What do you suggest? Eddard asks. We bury the dead here, Howland says. All of them. Raise cairns for our fallen friends, and for the Kingsguard who died defending this place. Let the world think only 2 men walked away from the Tower of Joy, you and me. Arthur nods slowly. And I die with my brothers, as I should have. As I would have, if not for... He glances at Jon sleeping in Eddard's arms. If not for a higher duty. They work through the night, carrying bodies down from the tower's height. Lord Willem Dustin, who served House Stark with unwavering loyalty. Ethan Glover, who survived the Mad King's dungeons only to fall here. Martin Castle, Master-at-Arms of Winterfell, whose sword had trained Eddard from boyhood. Theo Wool and Sir Mark Riswell, faithful unto death. The King's Guard receive their own cairn. Sir Gerald Hightower, the White Bull, Lord Commander who never broke an oath. Sir Oswell Whent, whose loyalty cost him everything. And officially, Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, greatest knight of his generation. As they pile stones upon stones, Arthur speaks quiet words over his fallen brothers. They kept faith, he says. Whatever else might be said of this day, they kept faith. Dawn finds them exhausted, but resolved. 3 men and a babe, bound together by secrets and necessity. Arthur has fashioned a crude sling for his arm from white silk, a Kingsguard cloak torn into bandages. Already he looks different, less like the legendary knight, and more like a common soldier. What name will you take? Eddard asks, as they prepare to leave the Tower of Joy behind. Arthur considers for a long moment. Let me be Sir Orene Dayne, a distant cousin who served as a household knight in Starfall. Word can spread that he was wounded in some skirmish during the war, that he seeks service in a great house to rebuild his fortune. And your sword? Howland asks, eyeing Dawn's distinctive pale blade. Must remain dead with Arthur Dayne, the knight says reluctantly. I'll cache it here, in the tower's foundation. Perhaps someday it will be found and returned to my house, when the wheel of time has turned enough that its presence won't raise questions. It pains him to leave the blade behind, Eddard can see. Dawn is more than just a sword. It's the symbol of House Dayne's honor, forged from star metal and passed down for generations. But sacrifice demands sacrifice. When we reach the northern kingdoms, Arthur, now Owain, says, "I'll need a new weapon. Something common. A knight's sword, well made but unremarkable." "I'll see it done," Eddard promises. They mount their surviving horses as the sun climbs higher, painting the Tower of Joy's red stones gold and crimson. Behind them, 7 cairns stand silent, witness to the day that changed everything. Ahead lies the long road north, through lands still healing from war's wounds. Jon sleeps peacefully against Eddard's chest, wrapped in a cloak of stark grey. To any who see them, they are simply Lord Eddard Stark returning from war with his bastard son and a pair of sworn swords. Nothing suspicious. Nothing to draw attention from those who might ask dangerous questions. But secrets have weight, and as they ride north through the morning heat, all 3 men feel the burden of the truth they carry. A bastard is not a bastard. A dead knight lives. And somewhere in the distance, a king sits his throne, unaware that the bloodline he sought to destroy continues in the arms of his dearest friend. The road north winds through a realm still bleeding from war's wounds. Burned farmsteads dot the landscape like black scars, their roofs collapsed and walls charred by fires set months past. Fields that should be green with summer crops lie fallow, weeds choking the furrows where once wheat and barley grew. The war is over, but its aftermath lingers in every village they pass. Eddard guides his horse carefully around the remnants of a merchant's wagon, its wheels broken and goods scattered by brigands or desperate soldiers. Jon sleeps against his chest, wrapped in grey wool that bears the direwolf of House Stark. 3 days out from the Tower of Joy, and already the babe seems to sense the change in air and light as they move from dawn's desert heat toward cooler climes. Behind them, the man who was once Arthur Dayne rides in contemplative silence. He has taken the name Sir Oran Dayne now, and with it a new sword, good northern steel purchased from a travelling smith in a village that still smoked from recent burning. The blade is well made, but common, nothing like the star metal that once marked him as the sword of the morning. That title died with Arthur Dayne beneath the Tower of Joy's cairns. The realm is broken, Howland Reed observes, his Cranagman's eyes taking in the devastation. It will be years before these lands heal properly. Wars always leave scars, Owain says quietly, the first words he has spoken since sunrise. But this one cut deeper than most. Brother fought brother, friend turned against friend. The bonds that hold the realm together were stretched near to breaking. Eddard glances back at his newest companion. 3 days of travel, and still the man struggles with what he has become. The Kingsguard vows run deep, burned into a knight's soul like brands. To break them, even for good reason, leaves wounds that may never fully heal. "You speak as if you mourn Robert's victory," Howland says, his tone careful but pointed. "I mourn the necessity of it," Owain replies. King Aerys was mad, yes. His reign had to end. But the cost. He gestures at the burned farmstead they're passing. Thousands died for the sins of kings and princes, common folk who wanted nothing more than to tend their crops and raise their children. They crest a low hill, and before them stretches a valley where once a prosperous town stood. Now only broken walls remain, the keep at its heart a tumbled ruin. Ravens picket things best left unnamed in the streets below. "Whose work was this?" Eddard asks, Hard to say, Howland replies grimly. Could have been loyalists burning out rebels. Could have been rebels taking vengeance on loyalists. By the end, everyone had grievances to settle. Jon stirs in Eddard's arms, making small sounds that speak of hunger. They will need to stop soon. Find a village that still has whole roofs and willing hands to help with the child's needs. But first, there is something that needs addressing. Owain, Eddard says, using the knight's new name deliberately. We need to speak. The knight nods slowly. About the vows I broke. About the choice you made, Eddard corrects, and whether you can live with it. They dismount beside a stream that runs clear and cold despite the devastation around them. While Howland tends the horses and sees to Jon's needs, Eddard and Owain walk apart, following the water's edge until they are out of earshot. I swore to ward the king with all my strength, Owain says without preamble, to give my blood for his, to take no wife, hold no lands, father no children, to live and die at my post. His voice grows heavy with each word. 3 days passed. I abandoned that post. Let my sworn brothers die while I lived. Broke every oath that made me what I was. You chose to protect the innocent, Eddard says. That seems more worthy than dying for a mad king's ghost. But that's not how oaths work, is it? Owain's laugh is bitter. They don't come with exceptions for madness or worthier causes. They bind absolutely, or they mean nothing at all. The stream bubbles over stones worn smooth by countless years of water's passage. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cries out as it circles above the broken town. My father used to say that honor without sense is just pretty foolishness, Eddard says finally. That a man's first duty is to the innocent, especially children. If your vows demanded you let Jon die, then perhaps those vows were flawed from the start. Owain picks up a smooth stone from the stream bank, turns it over in his palm. Prince Rhaegar believed in prophecies, in destinies written in stars and blood. Part of me wonders if he saw this moment coming, if he knew I would face this choice. Does it matter what he saw or didn't see? Eddard asks. You're here now. Jon is alive now. The choice is made. And when we reach Winterfell, when I kneel before you in your great hall and swear new oaths, how do I know I won't break those too when the moment comes? The question hangs between them like morning mist above the stream. It strikes to the heart of what Owain truly fears, not judgment from others, but the judgment of his own conscience. Because this time, you're choosing them freely, Eddard says, not bound by family tradition or royal command, but because you believe in what you're protecting. That makes them stronger, not weaker. They rejoin Howland, who has fashioned a crude camp beside the stream. Jon fords from a wet nurse's bottle they acquired in the last village, his grey eyes alert and curious as they take in this strange new world of sky and grass and flowing water. We should speak of practicalities, Howland says, once they're all gathered. When we reach the northern kingdoms, there will be questions about where you've been, Lord Stark, about the child, about your new sworn sword. Eddard nods. The story is simple enough. I found Jon at a brothel in some Dornish town, the product of a brief liaison during the war. Owain here was a household knight at Starfall, who was wounded in a skirmish and seeks new service. Nothing that should draw unwanted attention. And if someone recognizes me, Owain asks, I'm not exactly unknown in the southern kingdoms. You're officially dead, Howland points out. Men don't look too closely for ghosts, and the northern lords have little reason to know Arthur Dayne's face. Keep your head down, speak little, and you should pass unnoticed. There's something else we should discuss, Eddard says, his voice growing serious. Guessed right. Once we reach Winterfell, once you eat my bread and salt beneath my roof, you'll be under my protection. That's sacred law, older than kings or kingdoms. No harm can come to you there, so long as you offer none in return. Orena's eyes sharpen with understanding, and if Robert demands I be surrendered, then he'll learn that northern wolves bite when cornered, Eddard says simply. Guest right is absolute. Even kings must respect it, or risk being named oathbreakers themselves. The afternoon sun climbs higher as they continue north, leaving the burned valley behind. The landscape begins to change subtly. The grass grows greener. The air carries hints of pine and mountain stone. They are entering the borders of the northern kingdoms, leaving behind the war-torn riverlands for territories that have known peace longer. Tell me about Winterfell, Owain says as they ride. If I'm to serve there, I should know what manner of place it is. Eddard's face softens as he speaks of home. It's old. Older than Aegon's conquest, older than the faith, older than memory. Built on hot springs that keep it warm even in the depths of winter. The walls are grey stone, thick enough to withstand siege engines. The god's wood at its heart has a weirwood tree that stood for 3,000 years. And your household? Small, by southern standards. We keep few servants, fewer guards. The North values strength and loyalty over pomp. My wife Catelyn is there, with our son Robb. They know nothing of what happened at the Tower of Joy, and it must remain that way. Jon makes a small sound, and Eddard adjusts the child's position. To them, this is my bastard son, born of war and folly. They'll accept him because they must, but don't expect warmth, especially not from my wife. I understand, Owain says quietly, and I'm grateful for the sanctuary you're offering, more grateful than words can express. The sun is sinking toward the western peaks when they finally catch sight of smoke rising from a village ahead. Not the black smoke of burning, but the grey wisps of hearth fires and smithies, signs of life returning to normal after war's chaos. We'll rest there tonight, Eddard decides. Jon needs proper care, and the horses could use good grain and clean water. As they approach the village gates, Owain pulls his hood up slightly, shadowing his face. To any casual observer, he is simply another knight in service to Lord Stark, unremarkable and unworthy of close attention. The transformation from legend to common man is nearly complete. What will you tell them? Howland asks quietly. About where you've been these past months? The truth, mostly, Eddard replies, that I rode south to find my sister and succeeded in bringing home what remained of our family. He looks down at Jon, sleeping peacefully against his chest. Sometimes the best lies are built on foundations of truth. The village welcomes them with the courtesy due a great lord travelling with his household. There are rooms at the inn, warm meals, and careful questions that Eddard answers with practiced ease. Yes, the war is over. Yes, King Robert rules justly. Yes, this is his bastard son, born in the south, and now travelling north to be raised at Winterfell. No one asks about the quiet knight who speaks little and watches everything. In a realm still recovering from civil war, travelling warriors are common enough to pass without comment. That night, as Jon sleeps in a proper cradle borrowed from the innkeeper's wife, the three men sit by the fire and plan their final approach to Winterfell. Soon they will be home, and the real work of keeping secrets will begin. The grey walls of Winterfell rise before them, like old friends returning from a long journey. After weeks on the road, the sight of home brings a tightness to Eddard's chest that has nothing to do with the babe sleeping in his arms. The ancient stones seem unchanged, weathered by time and wind, but standing firm against whatever storms may come. Smoke rises from the chimneys, and the direwolf banners fly proud from the towers. "My lord," the guard at the gate calls out, recognition dawning on his weathered face. "Welcome home." Eddard nods as they pass beneath the portcullis. Familiar faces line the courtyard. Stable boys and servants, men-at-arms and craftsmen, all gathering to witness their lord's return from war. Their eyes take in the small party with curiosity and relief. The war is over, and Lord Stark has come home safely. But their gazes linger on the child in his arms, and whispers follow in their wake. Sir Roderick Castle, the master-at-arms, steps forward with a weathered smile. "My lord, it does my heart good to see you safe returned." The household has been eager for word. "Thank you, Sir Roderick. It's good to be home." Eddard dismounts carefully, mindful of Jon in his arms. "This is my son, Jon Snow." The name carries clearly across the courtyard, and Eddard sees understanding ripple through the gathered crowd. A bastard son, born of war and carried home like a trophy of conquest. Such things are not uncommon among great lords, though they are not often acknowledged so openly. "Your son, my lord?" Sir Roderick asks, his voice carefully neutral. "My blood," Eddard confirms. "He'll be raised here at Winterfell, as a Stark should be." Behind him, Owain dismounts with practiced grace despite his still healing shoulder. To the watching eyes, he appears to be simply another sworn sword, unremarkable save for his Southron features and the quality of his arms. "And this is Ser Orane Dayne, a knight late of Starfall who seeks service in my house," Eddard continues. "He fought with honor during the rebellion and has earned my trust." Sir Roderick's eyes sharpen slightly at the Dayne name, but he nods respectfully. "Any knight Lord Stark vouches for is welcome at Winterfell. We'll see you quartered properly, sir." "My thanks," Owain says quietly, his voice carrying none of the legendary Arthur Dayne's presence. He is just another landless knight now, seeking shelter and purpose in a great lord's household. The great doors of the keep swing open, and Catelyn Stark emerges into the autumn sunlight. At 19, she is beautiful in the way of high-born ladies, auburn hair catching the light, blue eyes bright with intelligence and warmth. Behind her walks her scepter, and in the woman's arms is another babe, this one with auburn hair and his mother's fine features. Robb Stark, true-born son and heir to Winterfell. "Husband," Catelyn says, her voice carrying joy and relief in equal measure. "Thank the gods you've returned safely." But as her eyes fall on the dark-haired child in Eddard's arms, her expression changes. The warmth fades, replaced by something cooler and more careful. She understands immediately what she is seeing, and the knowledge cuts deep. "Cat," Eddard says gently, "I've missed you more than words can say." She comes to him then, but her movements are stiff with hurt and growing anger. When he leans down to kiss her, she turns her head so his lips brush her cheek instead of her mouth. "I see you haven't returned alone," she says, her voice controlled but sharp. "Is this the child you wrote of in your letter?" "This is Jon," Eddard says simply. "My son." The words hang in the air between them like a blade. Around the courtyard, servants find sudden tasks that require their urgent attention, though their ears remain alert for what comes next. "Your son?" Catelyn repeats, her blue eyes fixed on Jon's sleeping face. The babe is beautiful, with his dark, stark hair and strong features, but that only makes the sting worse. "And where, may I ask, did you acquire this son?" "In Dorne," Eddard says, meeting her gaze steadily. He was born during the war. To whom? That doesn't matter now. What matters is that he's my blood, and he'll be raised as such. Catelyn's face goes pale, then flushed. It doesn't matter. You bring your bastard home to be raised alongside our true-born son, and you say it doesn't matter who bore him. The scepter-holding Robb takes a step back, sensing the storm gathering between lord and lady. Other servants begin to drift away, unwilling to witness what promises to be an ugly scene. "Cat," Eddard says softly, "I know this is difficult." "Difficult?" Her voice rises despite her attempts at control. "You were gone for a year, Ned. A year of wondering if I would ever see you again, of praying for your safety, of counting the days until you returned. And this is what you bring me. Evidence of your infidelity." Jon stirs in Eddard's arms, perhaps sensing the tension around him. His grey eyes open, alert and curious, taking in this new place with an infant's wonder. He makes a small sound, not quite a cry, but close enough to draw every eye in the courtyard. "Look at him," Catelyn says, her voice breaking slightly. "He has your eyes, your colouring. There's no denying whose child he is." She pauses, and when she continues, her words are like ice. "While I waited here, faithful and true, you were warming another woman's bed." "That's enough," Eddard says firmly, though his voice remains quiet. This is neither the time nor the place for such words. We'll speak of this privately. Will we? And what will you tell me then? Some pretty lie about how it meant nothing? About how you thought of me even as you lay with her? Owain stands forgotten near the horses, his discomfort plain. This is family business. Private grief made public by anger and hurt. He has seen such scenes before in great houses, the bitter fruits of war and separation, of duty conflicting with desire. Howland Reed clears his throat softly. "Perhaps we should see to the children, my lord. They've had a long journey." The words break through Catelyn's anger like cold water. She looks at her husband, at the bastard in his arms, at her own son held by the scepter. 2 boys, born within months of each other. One a Stark heir, the other a Stark shame. "Yes," she says finally, her voice controlled once more. "The children need care." She turns to the scepter. "Take Lord Robb to the nursery. See that he's fed and settled." Then, without another word to her husband, she turns and walks back into the keep. The great doors swing shut behind her with finality. Eddard stands alone in the courtyard, Jon sleeping peacefully in his arms, seemingly unaware of the domestic battlefield he has already created. The watching servants begin to disperse, murmuring among themselves about bastards and betrayals, about how Lady Stark took the news. "My lord," Sir Roderick says quietly, "perhaps you'd like me to show Ser Orane to his quarters, and we should see about a wet nurse for the babe." "Thank you, Roderick. That would be helpful." Eddard's voice is weary, the toll of the last weeks finally showing. He has saved Jon's life, kept his promise to Lyanna, and found a way to honor his duty. But the cost of that honor is only beginning to become clear. Owain approaches carefully. "My lord, if there's anything I can do—" "Just be what you appear to be," Eddard says quietly. "A knight seeking service, nothing more. The fewer questions asked, the safer we all are." "Understood, my lord." As they enter the keep, the familiar smell of home washes over them. Rushes and beeswax, wood smoke and cooking fires. The great hall stretches before them, its high ceiling lost in shadows. Banners hang from the walls, dire wolves on grey fields, reminders of the ancient line they serve. A servant approaches, a motherly woman with kind eyes. "My lord, I'm Willa. I served as wet nurse to your son Robb when Lady Stark's milk ran short." If you've need of such service for the babe? Yes, Eddard says gratefully. Jon will need proper care, and perhaps you could show Ser Orane to the knight's quarters. He'll be joining our household. Of course, my lord. Willa takes Jon gently, her experienced hands settling him against her shoulder. He's a beautiful child, strong like his father. Eddard watches as she carries Jon away, the babe already reaching for her with small, grasping fingers. In time, perhaps, the household will grow accustomed to his presence. The servants will learn to treat him with the respect due a lord's son, bastard though he may be. But Catelyn, that will be harder. The wound he has opened in his marriage may never fully heal, my lord, Owain says quietly. Your lady wife. Will she accept my presence here? If she knows I'm from Dorne. She'll accept what she must, Eddard says, with more confidence than he feels. Guest right protects you now, and beyond that, my word. You served me faithfully on the journey north. That's all anyone needs to know. As they walk deeper into the keep, past familiar chambers and corridors, Eddard reflects on the strange turn his life has taken. A week ago, he was returning from war with nothing but victory and grief. Now he harbours one of the realm's greatest knights under a false name, claims another man's son as his bastard, and faces the bitter disappointment of a wife who believes him faithless. The price of keeping promises, it seems, is higher than he ever imagined. But as they reach the Lord's chambers, as servants bustle about, preparing hot baths and clean clothes, as the familiar comforts of home surround them once more, Eddard knows he would pay it again. Lyanna is gone, but her son lives. Arthur Dayne has found refuge and purpose. And whatever anger Catelyn feels now, whatever distance grows between them, at least Jon Snow is safe. In the end, perhaps that must be enough. The Iron Throne looms like a jagged wound in the heart of King's Landing's throne room, its 1,000 blades twisted into a monument of conquest and pain. Robert Baratheon sits uncomfortably upon the seat, his warhammer won, his powerful frame dwarfing the smaller men who cluster around its base like ravens around carrion. At 21, the new king bears the flush of victory and the restless energy of a man unaccustomed to sitting still for long. The great hall buzzes with the low murmur of courtiers and petitioners, their voices echoing off stone walls still marked by scorch marks from the sack. Workmen labour to repair the damage Tywin Lannister's soldiers inflicted when they took the city for Robert. But the work goes slowly. Everything in King's Landing moves slowly these days, weighed down by the aftermath of war and the careful dance of forming a new order. "My king!" Grand Maester Pycelle intones from the base of the throne, his aged voice carrying across the hall. "We have received disturbing news from the Riverlands." Robert shifts on the uncomfortable seat, the metal scraping against his leather. He has never grown used to the throne's bite, the way it seems designed to punish whoever dares claim it. "What news, old man? More complaints about bandits? Reports of houses slow to bend the knee?" "More troubling than that, your grace." Pycelle unfurls a scroll with trembling hands. A merchant caravan travelling north reported seeing Lord Eddard Stark on the road from Dorne. They claim he was accompanied by 2 companions and a child. "A child?" Robert leans forward, suddenly interested. "What manner of child?" "A babe, your grace. Dark-haired, carried in Lord Stark's own arms. The merchants assumed—" Pycelle pauses delicately. "They assumed it was Lord Stark's natural son, born during the campaign." A few courtiers exchange glances at this news. Bastard children are common enough among great lords, but for Eddard Stark to acknowledge one so openly is unexpected. The Lord of Winterfell has always been known for his rigid honour. So Ned's finally learned what a woman's warmth can offer, Robert says with a rough laugh. About time. I was beginning to think marriage had gelded him entirely. Sir Barristan Selmy stands silent near the throne's base, his white cloak pristine, despite the realm's recent turmoil. At 46, he has served 3 kings now, watching them rise and fall like seasons. His weathered face shows no reaction to the talk of bastards and women, though his pale eyes remain alert. "There's more, Your Grace," Pycelle continues, his voice dropping lower. The merchants also reported one of Lord Stark's companions appeared to be a knight of high birth. Southron features, well armed, riding a destrier of good bloodlines. Many knights seek service after a war, Tywin Lannister observes from his place among the small council. The Lord of Casterly Rock speaks with the cold precision that has made him both feared and respected across the realm. The defeated often find new masters among the victorious. Robert grunts agreement, already losing interest. As long as they serve faithfully, I care little where they come from. Is there anything else, or can we move on to matters of actual importance? But then a different messenger enters the hall, a travel-stained rider bearing the colours of a minor house from the Riverlands. He approaches the throne with obvious nervousness, dropping to one knee before the Iron Throne's base. "Your Grace," the man says, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "I bring word from Lord Mallister of Seaguard. 3 days past, a wounded sellsword arrived at his castle seeking treatment. The man was dying, but before he passed, he spoke of something troubling." Robert's expression darkens. He has little patience for riddles and half-truths. "Speak plainly, man. What did this sellsword say?" "He claimed to have fought at the Tower of Joy, Your Grace. Said he was part of a company hired to watch the roads around Prince Rhaegar's hidey-hole." The messenger swallows nervously. "He swore he saw Sir Arthur Dayne leave that tower alive, mounted and armed, riding north with Lord Stark's party." The throne room erupts in whispers and exclamations. Several lords step forward, voices raised in disbelief or concern. But above the noise, one sound cuts through everything else, the sharp intake of breath from Sir Barristan Selmy. "Impossible," the old knight says, his composure cracking for the first time in memory. "Arthur died at the Tower of Joy. I spoke with Lord Stark myself when he returned. He told me Arthur fell fighting, that only he and Howland Reed survived the battle." "Perhaps the sellsword was delirious," Tywin suggests, though his golden eyes have grown calculating. Dying men often speak false truths, mixing memory with fever dreams. But Robert is no longer listening to counsel or excuses. He has risen from the Iron Throne, his massive frame radiating the fury that won him a crown. "Send for Jon Arryn," he commands, "and summon my secretaries. I want ravens sent north immediately." "Your Grace," Sir Barristan says carefully, "perhaps we should consider—" "Consider what?" Robert's voice booms across the hall. "That my best friend lied to me. That the greatest knight who ever lived might still draw breath after swearing swords to a mad king and dead prince." The king begins to pace before the throne, his heavy boots echoing on the stone floor. If Arthur Dayne lives, if he's found shelter somewhere in the north, then every man who fought for the Targaryens will take heart. They'll think their cause isn't truly dead. Tywin inclines his head slightly. "A reasonable concern, Your Grace. Dead martyrs inspire fewer followers than living heroes." "Exactly." Robert turns to face the assembled court, his dark eyes blazing. "And if Ned is harboring him, if he's given sanctuary to my enemies." The threat hangs unfinished in the air. "Surely Lord Stark would not—" someone begins, but Robert cuts them off with a gesture. I thought I knew Ned Stark, the king says heavily. Thought I understood his honor, his loyalty. But men change, especially when family is involved. His sister's death hit him hard. Perhaps hard enough to make him do something foolish. Sir Jaime Lannister speaks for the first time, his young voice carrying across the hall with practiced ease. The Sword of the Morning was a man of legend, Your Grace. If he still lives, if he's sworn himself to new service, that could complicate matters significantly. Robert's laugh is harsh and bitter. Complicated. Yes, I suppose that's one word for treason. The throne room has grown deathly quiet now, the weight of the king's anger pressing down on everyone present. Even the workmen have stopped their repairs, sensing the danger in the air. Your Grace, Tywin says smoothly. Perhaps it would be wise to request clarification from Lord Stark before drawing conclusions. A simple misunderstanding could be resolved with proper correspondence. Oh, there will be correspondence, Robert promises. Ravens flying north within the hour. I want answers from Winterfell, and I want them quickly. He stalks back to the Iron Throne, but does not sit. Instead, he grips one of the armrests, his knuckles white with tension. If Ned is playing games with me, if he thinks to protect my enemies under the guise of friendship. The ravens, Your Grace? Grand Maester Pycelle prompts gently. Yes. Send them now. Tell Lord Stark that his king requires immediate explanation of his companions on the journey north. Tell him I want to know the name and lineage of every man who rode with him. Robert's voice grows deadly quiet. And tell him that harboring my enemies is treason, regardless of past friendship. As the great Maester hurries away to draft the messages, the throne room slowly empties. Lords and courtiers drift away to spread the news, to whisper in corners about Arthur Dayne and Eddard Stark and the growing rift between king and friend. But Sir Barristan remains, standing alone before the Iron Throne, where Robert still grips the armrest like a lifeline. You knew him well, the king says eventually. Arthur Dayne. Was he the sort of man to break his oaths? To abandon his post for personal gain? Barristan considers the question carefully. Arthur was complicated, Your Grace. Utterly loyal to his concept of duty, but that concept didn't always align with simple obedience. He served Prince Rhaegar with genuine devotion, believed in him as both knight and man. Believed in him enough to survive when he should have died? Perhaps, Barristan admits reluctantly. If he thought there was still something worth protecting, some greater purpose to serve. He trails off, unwilling to voice the implications. Robert finally releases the throne and turns to face his Kingsguard. If Arthur Dayne has taken service with House Stark, if he's found new masters to replace his dead prince, what does that mean for the realm? It means, Your Grace, that the war may not be as finished as we believed. The words hang in the empty throne room like a funeral shroud. Outside, ravens take wing for the north, their black forms disappearing into grey skies that promise storm clouds ahead. In Winterfell, Eddard Stark tends his bastard son and offers shelter to a knight who should be dead. And in King's Landing, a young king learns that victory in war is easier to achieve than the peace that should follow. Steel rings against steel in Winterfell's practice yard as Sir Orraine Dayne works through his morning forms. The northern knight he spars with is competent but predictable, his attacks following patterns learned in peacetime. Orraine parries easily, his common blade deflecting thrust and cut with movements that betray years of training with legendary masters. But he holds back, always holds back. The temptation to display his true skill gnaws at him like hunger. to move with the fluid grace that once marked the sword of the morning, to demonstrate the techniques that made Arthur Dayne a legend sung in taverns across the Seven Kingdoms. Instead, he fights like what he appears to be, a household knight of modest ability, competent enough to serve, but nothing more. "Good form, Ser Orane," Ser Roderick Cassel observes from the yard's edge. "Your Southron training serves you well here in the north." Orane nods respectfully as he steps back from his opponent. "My thanks, Ser Roderick. The exercise helps keep old wounds from stiffening." It is true enough. The shoulder wound from Howland Reed's spear still aches on cold mornings, a reminder of the choice he made at the Tower of Joy. But the deeper wounds are not physical. They are cuts to his soul, places where honor and duty have been carved away to make room for this new existence. The practice yard empties as the morning meal approaches, but Orane remains, running through sword forms with methodical precision. He tells himself it is training, but in truth it is penance. Each movement is a reminder of what he once was and can never be again. "You move like a man carrying ghosts," Eddard says, approaching from the armory where he has been inspecting weapons. Orane lowers his blade. "Perhaps because I am, my lord. The man I was is buried beneath those cairns in Dawn. Sometimes I feel his presence watching me, judging the choices I've made." Eddard joins him in the center of the yard, away from ears that might overhear. Since arriving at Winterfell, they have developed a habit of these conversations, brief exchanges where the truth can breathe in the space between them. "He would understand," Eddard says quietly. "Arthur Dayne was many things, but he was not a fool. He would see the necessity of what we've done." "Would he?" Orane's laugh is bitter. "I swore to ward the king with all my strength, to give my blood for his. Instead, I live while my sworn brothers lie dead. I've traded a white cloak for a grey one, and called it honor." "You've protected a child," Eddard corrects. "That seems more worthy than dying for a madman's pride." They walk toward the Godswood, their voices dropping lower as they move away from the keep's bustle. Here, among the ancient trees and rustling leaves, they can speak more freely of dangerous truths. "Tell me about the prophecy," Eddard says, once they are alone. "You mentioned it at the tower, but there's more, isn't there? Something that drove Rhaegar to believe so strongly in his children's destiny." Orane sits on a fallen log, his sword across his knees. Prince Rhaegar was, obsessed is too simple a word, consumed, perhaps, by visions of darkness and the role his bloodline would play in standing against it. What manner of darkness? The ancient prophecies speak of a long night coming again, of dead things walking and winter that lasts a generation. They say Azor Ahai will be reborn to fight this evil, a prince promised by fire and blood. Orane's voice grows heavy with memory. "When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt." Eddard frowns. And Rhaegar believed his son would be this promised prince? He was certain of it. A comet blazed above King's Landing on the night little Aegon was conceived. The bleeding star, he called it. Prince Rhaegar spoke of dreams, of visions that showed him 3 heads of the dragon standing against an endless winter. Orane looks up at the weirwood tree's carved face. He believed the prophecy demanded he have 3 children. Aegon was the first, Rhaenys was the second, and Jon would have been the third, Eddard finishes quietly. If my suspicions are correct, yes. But prophecies are treacherous things, my lord. They rarely unfold as men expect. Orane's grip tightens on his sword hilt. Aegon is dead. Rhaenys is dead. If the prince that was promised was meant to come from Rhaegar's line, then Jon may be our last hope." The weight of those words settles between them like winter frost. A bastard boy with dark hair and grey eyes, sleeping peacefully in Winterfell's nursery, potentially bearing the blood needed to save the realm from some unimaginable threat. "You speak as if you believe it," Eddard observes. "The prophecy, the promised prince, all of it." "I've seen things, my lord. In my travels with Prince Rhaegar in the years before the war. Dreams that came true, small prophecies that proved accurate. Magic is not dead in this world. It merely sleeps, waiting for the proper moment to wake." Oraine's voice drops to barely above a whisper. "If there's even a chance that Jon carries that destiny, then keeping him safe becomes more than just honoring a promise to your sister. It becomes a duty to the realm itself." They sit in contemplative silence, listening to the wind rustle through autumn leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a raven calls out, its harsh cry echoing off the old stones. "There's another consideration," Eddard says eventually. "Succession law. If Jon's parentage were ever proven, if he were legitimized as Aegon Targaryen, he would have a claim to the Iron Throne," Oraine finishes. "A stronger claim than Viserys, who is merely Aerys's second son. Under Targaryen law, Rhaegar's legitimate heir comes before his uncle. Which is why he can never be legitimized, why he must remain Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, for the rest of his days." Eddard's voice carries the weight of resignation. "Even if the prophecy is true, even if he's destined for greatness, that greatness cannot come through his true name. Unless," Oraine hesitates, then continues carefully, "unless the time comes when Robert's reign ends, when the realm faces a threat so great that only a true king can stand against it. You speak of rebellion, of treason. I speak of possibilities, my lord. Robert is young and strong now, but kings die. Sometimes of natural causes, sometimes not. And when they do, the realm looks for new leadership." Oraine meets Eddard's grey eyes. "I'm not suggesting we plot against your friend, only that we prepare for whatever future may come." A raven caws again, closer this time. They both look up to see the black bird settling on a branch above them, its dark eyes intelligent and watchful. "Ravens," Eddard mutters. "I've been expecting them for days now." "From King's Landing? Where else? Robert will have heard rumors by now. About my companions on the road north, about the knight who rides with me. It's only a matter of time before he starts asking direct questions." Oraine nods grimly. "And when he does, we face that storm when it comes. For now, you remain Sir Oraine Dayne, a distant cousin seeking service. I remain Lord Stark, loyal to my king and friend, and Jon remains my bastard son, born of war and folly. And if the storm proves too fierce, if Robert demands I be surrendered," Eddard's jaw sets with determination, "then he'll learn that guest right is sacred in the north, that Winterfell protects those who seek shelter beneath its roof, regardless of kings or commands." They rise from the log and begin walking back toward the keep. Around them, Winterfell goes about its daily business. Servants tending fires, guards walking their posts, children playing in the courtyards. A peaceful scene that masks the dangerous currents flowing beneath. "There's something else we should discuss," Oraine says as they near the armory. "Training. If Jon is to fulfill any great destiny, if he's to be more than just a bastard with a famous bloodline, he'll need proper instruction. Sword work, tactics, leadership. The skills a king needs, even if he never wears a crown." "He's barely a month old," Eddard points out with a slight smile. Let's see him learn to walk before we worry about teaching him to fight. Time moves faster than we think, my lord. In 15 years, he'll be a man grown. The choices we make now about his education will shape what kind of man he becomes. Eddard considers this as they enter the armory. The smell of oil and steel surrounds them, familiar scents that speak of preparation and readiness. You're offering to train him, if you'll permit it. Not as Arthur Dayne, that man is dead and buried, but as Sir Owain, a knight who knows the old ways, the proper forms. I could teach him sword work, give him the skills to defend himself and others. And the prophecy? Would you tell him of his potential destiny? Owain shakes his head slowly. Not unless necessity demands it. Let him grow up as Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell. Let him find his own path to greatness, if greatness is indeed his fate. The burden of prophecy is too heavy for a child to bear. A horn sounds from the main gate, visitors approaching. Both men tense, wondering if this is the moment they've been dreading, if ravens from King's Landing have finally arrived with demands they cannot ignore. But for now, at least, the secret holds. Jon sleeps peacefully in the nursery. Sir Owain practices his sword work in the yard, and Lord Stark governs his lands with the honor that has always defined him. The storm may be gathering, but it has not yet broken. In the Godswood, the old gods watch through carved eyes of weirwood, keeping their own counsel about prophecies and promised princes, about the choices that shape the fate of realms. The ravens arrive at dawn, their black wings cutting through morning mist like harbingers of storm. 3 birds bearing the royal seal, their messages weighted with all the authority of the Iron Throne. Maester Luwin brings them to Eddard Solar with hands that tremble slightly, his weathered face grave with understanding of what they likely contain. Eddard breaks the first seal with deliberate calm, though his heart pounds against his ribs like a caged bird. Robert's words leap from the parchment with familiar fury, each sentence a hammer blow against the friendship they once shared. By royal command, he reads aloud to the empty chamber, his voice growing heavy. Lord Eddard Stark is commanded to surrender immediately, one Sir Arthur Dayne, called the Sword of the Morning, traitor to the crown and oathbreaker of the King's Guard, that he may face the King's justice for abandoning his post and failing in his sworn duties. The second raven bears similar demands, but with additional threats. Robert's patience, never vast at the best of times, has evidently worn thin. Should said traitor not be produced within a fortnight of this message, Lord Stark will be considered in violation of his oaths of fealty and subject to penalties as befits such defiance. The third message is personal, written in Robert's own hand rather than a scribe's careful script. Ned, it begins, I pray these other messages are the result of some misunderstanding. Tell me you haven't given shelter to my enemies. Tell me the friend I fought beside at the Trident still lives beneath that honor of yours. But if you've chosen to protect those who would see me dead, then you've chosen to make yourself my enemy as well. Eddard sets the messages aside and walks to the window that overlooks Winterfell's Godswood. Below, he can see Owain practicing his morning forms, the knight's movements careful and controlled as always. Soon, servants will begin their daily tasks. Catelyn will wake to tend their children. Life will continue its steady rhythm, unless he chooses to shatter it. A soft knock interrupts his brooding. Enter, he calls, and Catelyn steps into the Solar. She wears a morning gown of blue wool, her auburn hair caught back in a simple braid. At 19, she possesses the kind of beauty that grows more striking with familiarity, but this morning her face is tight with concern. Husband, she says, her voice carefully neutral. Maester Lewin said ravens came from the capital. He seemed troubled. Eddard gestures to the messages scattered across his desk. Robert knows about Owain. He wants him surrendered to face the king's justice. Catelyn's blue eyes widen slightly. Owain? But he's just a household knight. Why would the king care about... She stops, understanding beginning to dawn. Who is he, Ned? Really? The weight of secrets presses down on Eddard like stones. How much can he tell her? How much dare he reveal without endangering them all? Someone who fought on the wrong side during the war. Someone Robert has reason to hate. And you've given him sanctuary. It's not a question. Catelyn moves to stand beside him at the window, her presence both comforting and accusatory. Despite knowing it could bring the king's wrath down on our house, despite the danger to our children. Guest right is sacred, Eddard says quietly. Older than kings or kingdoms, I cannot violate it, not even for Robert. Cannot? Or will not? Her voice sharpens. There's a difference, husband. One speaks of obligation, the other of choice. Below in the yard, Owain finishes his forms and begins cleaning his blade. The morning sun catches the steel, making it gleam like water. Such an ordinary sight, yet everything hangs in the balance of what comes next. I made a promise, Eddard says finally, to someone who mattered, someone who trusted me to keep faith, even when it cost dearly. Your sister. Catelyn's voice softens with understanding. This is about Lyanna. Eddard nods, unable to trust his voice to remain steady. Below, Owain sheathes his sword and begins walking toward the keep. Soon he will learn of the ravens. Soon, all their careful plans will face the ultimate test. What will you do? Catelyn asks. Before Eddard can answer, another knock sounds at the door. This time it is Ser Roderick, his grizzled face bearing the expression of a man who has seen too much war to be easily surprised. My lord, he says carefully. Sir Owain requests audience, says it's a matter of some urgency. Send him in. Owain enters with the measured stride of a man walking to his own execution. He has read the situation in the Raven's arrival, in the tension that now permeates Winterfell like smoke from a distant fire. His eyes move from Eddard to Catelyn to the scattered messages on the desk. The king knows, he says simply. Yes. Eddard's voice is hoarse with strain. He demands you be surrendered within a fortnight. Then I should leave. Tonight, before his demands can compromise your honor further. Owain's hand rests on his sword hilt, but there is no defiance in the gesture, only weary acceptance. I can disappear into the north, perhaps find passage across the narrow sea. Robert's reach doesn't extend to the free cities. No. The word escapes Eddard with surprising firmness. I will not break guest right. Not for kings, not for friends, not for anyone. Catelyn stares at her husband with something approaching shock. Ned, you cannot mean to defy Robert openly. Think of what that could cost us. Think of our children. I am thinking of them, Eddard replies. What lesson do I teach Rob if I show him that honor can be traded away when the price grows too high? What kind of lord would I be if I cast out those who seek my protection? Owain steps forward, his voice urgent. My lord, I appreciate your principles, but practicality must rule here. Robert's anger could bring war to your doorstep. I won't be responsible for that. And I won't be responsible for abandoning my duty. Eddard turns to face them both fully. Guest right isn't just tradition. It's the foundation on which civilization rests. The moment we start making exceptions, The moment we decide that some guests are more worthy of protection than others, we begin the slide toward chaos. The solar falls silent, except for the distant sounds of Winterfell awakening. Servants calling to each other, horses stamping in the stables, the ever-present wind through the stones. Normal sounds of a normal morning in a normal castle, yet nothing will be normal again after this day. There is another way, Owain says slowly. A way that preserves your honor, while giving Robert what he wants. Eddard raises an eyebrow. What do you propose? Sir Arthur Dayne abandoned his post and betrayed his vows. That man deserves whatever justice Robert would deliver. Owain's violet eyes meet Eddard's grey ones. But Sir Arthur Dayne is dead, buried beneath the cairns at the Tower of Joy. What stands before you now is Sir Owain Dayne, a distant cousin who seeks to atone for his family's shame by serving House Stark. Catelyn's sharp intake of breath is the only sound in the chamber. She understands now, sees the careful game they've been playing and the stakes involved. You're asking me to lie to my king, Eddard says quietly. I'm asking you to protect a man who has sworn himself to your service, to uphold the bonds between lord and sworn sword that are just as sacred as guest right. Owain moves to the center of the room, and to everyone's shock, drops to one knee. Lord Stark, I offer you my sword, my life, my honor. Not as Arthur Dayne, the King's Guard, but as Owain Dayne, the household knight. Let that man serve you faithfully, and let the other remain dead and buried. The moment stretches like a bowstring drawn taut. In this solar, with morning light streaming through ancient windows, the fate of houses and perhaps kingdoms hangs on Eddard's next words. Catelyn, he says, without taking his eyes from the kneeling knight. Leave us. Ned, Please. What happens next? It's better if you can truthfully say you weren't present. She hesitates, then nods curtly and sweeps from the room. The door closes with a soft click, leaving only the two men and the weight of history between them. Rise, Sir Owain, Eddard says formally. If you would serve House Stark, then serve it truly. Swear the oaths, mean every word, and never give me cause to regret this choice. Owain stands, his face transformed. The careful mask he has worn since the Tower of Joy finally falls away, replaced by something approaching peace. I swear by the old gods and the new, that I will shield your back and keep your counsel, and give my life for yours if need be. I swear it by earth and water, by bronze and iron, by ice and fire. And I accept your service. Eddard's voice carries the weight of formal ceremony. Rise, my sworn sword. Rise, and stand ready to face whatever storms may come. As Owain gains his feet, both men understand that everything has changed. Arthur Dayne, the legendary King's Guard, is truly dead now, not just in name but in spirit. What remains is something new. A knight sworn to House Stark, bound by oaths freely given rather than chains of birth and tradition. Outside, ravens take wing with messages of their own. To King's Landing will go word that Sir Arthur Dayne died at the Tower of Joy as reported, that no such man has found shelter at Winterfell. It is truth of a sort, though perhaps not the truth Robert expects to hear. But in this solar, watching the morning sun paint patterns on ancient stone, two men have forged something stronger than lies or half-truths. They have created a new loyalty, a new bond, a new understanding of what honor truly means. The crisis has passed. The transformation is complete. The great hall of Winterfell has witnessed countless ceremonies over its 1,000 years, weddings and funerals, oath-takings and declarations of war. But never has it held such a strange gathering as this autumn evening, when the setting sun streams through tall windows to illuminate a ritual that exists in no formal book of law or custom. Eddard stands beneath the high table where the lords of Winterfell have sat for generations, his face grave with the weight of what they are about to do. Beside him, Maester Luwin holds a leather-bound tome, not the record of Winterfell's sworn swords, for this ceremony must remain unwritten, but the ancient volume of northern laws that speaks to the bonds between lord and man. The household has gathered as tradition demands. Sir Roderick Castle stands with the men-at-arms, his grizzled face puzzled but respectful. The servants cluster near the walls, whispering among themselves about the strange summons that brought them here at day's end. Catelyn sits in her place of honor, her blue eyes watchful and troubled, baby Rob sleeping peacefully in her arms, while Jon rests in his wet nurse's care. All eyes turn to the hall's center, where Arthur Dayne, the man who calls himself Aurane, kneels on the ancient stones, worn smooth by countless such moments. Before him lies not the star metal blade that once marked him as the sword of the morning, but a simple northern sword, well made but unremarkable. Beside it rests a bundle of white silk, torn strips of a Kingsguard cloak that he has carried since the Tower of Joy. The symbolism is clear to those who understand. The white cloak represents what he was. The common blade speaks to what he would become. "Rise, Sir Aurane," Eddard commands, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's vaulted spaces. Arthur stands with fluid grace, his violet eyes meeting Eddard's grey ones across the space between them. In this moment, with the gathered household watching and history hanging in the balance, both men understand that they are creating something new, a bond forged not by birth or royal command, but by choice and mutual respect. "You have asked to enter my service," Eddard continues, following the ancient formulas that bind lord to man. "To swear yourself to House Stark and take your place among those who defend our lands and protect our people. Do you come to this freely, without coercion or reservation?" "I do, my lord," Arthur replies, his voice strong and clear. "Then speak the words that will bind you, if you truly mean them." Arthur draws the plain sword at his side, raising it with both hands until the blade points toward Winterfell's ancient rafters. The steel catches the dying light, gleaming like water in the hall's shadows. "I, Aurane Dayne, swear by the old gods and the new that I will be faithful to House Stark. I pledge my sword to your service, my counsel to your cause, my life to your protection." His voice grows stronger with each word, as if the oath itself gives him new strength. "I swear to guard your secrets and defend your children, to stand at your back in battle and speak truth in your counsels. From this day until my last day, I am your man." The hall falls silent, except for the whisper of wind through stone and the distant sound of ravens settling in for the night. This is the moment when words become reality, when a legendary knight of the King's Guard transforms into a simple household sworn sword. "And I, Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, accept your service." Eddard's voice carries the weight of formal ceremony. "I pledge to you food and shelter, protection and purpose, honor and honest treatment. Your service shall be remembered, your loyalty rewarded, your sacrifice honored. Rise, Sir Aurane Dayne, sworn sword of Winterfell." Arthur sheathes his blade and steps back, but the ceremony is not yet complete. The man who was once Arthur Dayne has one final burden to shed, one last connection to sever with his former life. "My lord," he says, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "Before I can truly serve House Stark, I must lay to rest the man I was. Will you bear witness to his final passing? Eddard nods solemnly. I will. Arthur kneels again and picks up the bundle of white silk. Once, these torn strips were part of a cloak that marked him as one of the realm's most elite knights, a guardian of kings, sworn to protect the royal family unto death. Now they serve a different purpose entirely. I, who was Arthur Dayne, called the Sword of the Morning, renounce all claim to that name and title. His voice grows heavy with finality. I cast aside the white cloak that bound me to a mad king and a dead prince. I abandon the vows that would have seen me die in service to those unworthy of such sacrifice. He holds the white silk high for all to see, then lowers it to the cold stones before him. Let Arthur Dayne be remembered as he was, a knight who served with honor until honor itself became impossible. Let his name die here, in this place, witnessed by these people. Let no man speak it again, save in memory of what was lost at the Tower of Joy. From somewhere in his robes, he produces a small vial of oil, lamp oil by the smell. He pours it over the white silk, the liquid darkening the torn fabric, until it resembles nothing so much as bandages stained with old blood. My lord, he says to Eddard, would you give me fire? Eddard takes a torch from its bracket on the nearby wall and hands it to the kneeling knight. The flame dances in the hall's draughts, casting moving shadows across the assembled faces. Arthur touches the torch to the oil-soaked silk. The fire catches immediately, flames licking upward with surprising brightness. The white cloak burns quickly, consumed by hungry fire, until nothing remains but ash and smoke. It is done, Arthur says, rising to his feet once more. Arthur Dayne is dead. Only Aurane remains. Your man, your sword, your sworn protector. Catelyn watches this strange ritual with fascination and growing understanding. She sees now why her husband felt compelled to offer sanctuary, why he risked Robert's anger to protect this man. There is something profound happening here, something that goes beyond simple oath-taking or political calculation. Sir Aurane, she says, her voice carrying clearly across the hall. You renounce your old service to take up new duties. But what of the sword that made you legend? What of Dawn, the blade of the Sword of the Morning? Arthur's face grows solemn at the question. Dawn lies buried in the red sands of Dawn, my lady, hidden where none will find it, until the wheel of time turns far enough that its discovery matters naught. The blade belongs to House Dayne, and the title of Sword of the Morning. Since I can claim neither name nor honor, the sword must remain lost. And if House Dayne has need of it, if another proves worthy of the title, then they will find a way to reclaim what was lost, as has always been the way of such things. Arthur's violet eyes meet hers directly. I cannot be the Sword of the Morning and your sworn sword both, my lady. The choice is made. Sir Roderick steps forward from his place among the men-at-arms. My lord, if I may. At Eddard's nod, the old knight continues. We've witnessed something rare tonight, a man choosing his own honor over the honor others would thrust upon him. It's been my privilege to serve House Stark for many years, and I say this man is welcome among us. A murmur of agreement rises from the gathered household. These are northern folk, practical people who value substance over ceremony, truth over pretty lies. They have heard Arthur's words and seen his sacrifice, and they judge him worthy. Then it is settled, Eddard declares. Let all here remember that on this night, Sir Aurane Dayne swore himself to House Stark's service. Let his oath be recorded in the heart, if not on paper. Let his name be spoken with respect among those who call Winterfell home. The formal ceremony concludes, but the evening's work is not yet finished. As the household disperses to their evening meals and duties, Eddard and Arthur remain in the great hall, standing before the small pile of ash that marks the symbolic grave of Arthur Dayne. "Do you regret it?" Eddard asks quietly. "Giving up everything you were for this uncertain future?" Arthur considers the question, his eyes fixed on the ashes of his former life. "I regret many things, my lord. I regret that Prince Rhaegar died believing his children would save the realm. I regret that good men fell at the Tower of Joy for causes that seem meaningless now. I regret that Lady Lyanna never lived to see her son take his first steps." He pauses, then looks up at Eddard with something approaching peace in his expression. "But I do not regret this choice. For the first time since I took the White, I serve someone I chose to serve. Someone worthy of the sacrifice." The dying fire in the hearth casts dancing shadows on the ancient stones as both men contemplate the weight of what they have done. Outside, night settles over Winterfell like a familiar cloak, bringing with it the promise of winter winds and the eternal cycle of seasons that governs the north. In the days to come, ravens will carry word southward that Lord Stark stands ready to answer any questions about his household and his guests. The messages will speak truth, that no man named Arthur Dayne lives beneath Winterfell's roof, that the Sword of the Morning died at the Tower of Joy as previously reported. But here in this hall, surrounded by the weight of history and witnessed by the ancient gods of the north, something new has been born. A loyalty freely given, an oath truly meant, a man reborn through his own choice rather than the accidents of birth. The legend of Arthur Dayne may be ended, but the story of Aurane the Sworn Sword has only just begun. The black ravens that carry news between the great houses of Westeros know no loyalties save to their masters. But they might as well be spreading fire as words. From Winterfell to King's Landing, from the Riverlands to Dawn, the whispers spread like plague through autumn mists. Arthur Dayne lives. The Sword of the Morning survived the Tower of Joy. And now he serves the wolves of the north. On Dragonstone, where the wind howls eternally around ancient stone carved with dragon shapes, the news arrives like a thunderbolt from clear skies. The island fortress that once housed the mighty Targaryen fleet now shelters only ghosts and exiles, its halls echoing with memories of power long since fled across the narrow sea. Queen Rhaegar Targaryen sits in the chamber that was once her refuge, her silver hair dimmed by grief and premature aging. At 39, she looks older, worn down by years of bearing children to a madman and watching most of them die in cradles or on battlefields. Beside her, 7-year-old Viserys plays with wooden dragons, his violet eyes bright with the innocence of childhood, despite all he has witnessed. "Your Grace," the Maester says carefully, approaching with the raven scroll. "Word from the mainland. From King's Landing." Rhaegar takes the message with hands that tremble only slightly. She has grown accustomed to bad news, learned to steel herself against fresh wounds. But as her eyes scan the parchment, something like hope flickers across her weathered features. "Viserys," she says softly, "come here, my dragon." The boy approaches with the careful grace that marks him as royal born, his silver gold hair catching the weak light that filters through Dragonstone's narrow windows. "What is it, Mother? More news about Uncle Robert?" "News about someone else, entirely." Rhaegar's voice carries a weight that makes the child look up sharply. Do you remember the stories I told you about your brother's knights? About the men who served him with honor?" Viserys nods solemnly. At 7, he understands more about death and loss than most children twice his age. Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. He was the greatest knight who ever lived. Was, yes. We thought him dead, killed at the Tower of Joy when Lord Stark came for his sister. Rhaegar holds the parchment carefully, as if it might crumble to dust. But it seems the Sword of the Morning proved harder to kill than anyone imagined. The boy's eyes widen. He lives? Truly? According to this, he not only lives, but has taken service with House Stark. The very man who should have been his enemy has become his protector. Rhaegar's voice grows thoughtful. There may be more to this tale than meets the eye. Across Dragonstone's great hall, Stannis Baratheon receives the same news with the grim calculation that marks all his judgments. At 19, Robert's younger brother has already shown the tactical mind that will serve him well as Lord of Dragonstone, but he possesses none of Robert's charisma or easy charm. "Interesting," he says to Maester Cresson, his voice as cold as the stone around them. Arthur Dayne chooses exile over death. Not what I would have expected from the Sword of the Morning. Perhaps there are circumstances we don't understand, my lord, the old Maester suggests carefully. Perhaps, or perhaps legends are just men after all, with all the weaknesses that implies. Stannis sets the message aside with characteristic efficiency. "Send word to my brother. He'll want to know that I've received this intelligence and await his commands. And the Targaryens, my lord? They're still here on Dragonstone. Are guests under my roof until Robert decides otherwise. Guest right protects them, just as it apparently protects Sir Arthur in Winterfell." Stannis' jaw tightens, though I wonder how long either situation will remain tenable. In King's Landing, the reaction is far less measured. Robert Baratheon tears through the Red Keep like a summer storm, his fury echoing off walls still scarred from the recent sack. The small council chambers ring with his bellowing voice as lords and advisers scatter before his wrath like leaves before a hurricane. "Lies!" he roars, sweeping a goblet of wine off the table with enough force to shatter it against the opposite wall. "Ned sends me lies and half-truths when I demand simple honesty." Grand Maester Pycelle cringes in his chair, the scroll from Winterfell trembling in his aged hands. "Your Grace, Lord Stark's message is quite clear. He states unequivocally that no man named Arthur Dayne lives beneath his roof, that the Sword of the Morning died at the Tower of Joy as originally reported. Then explain the merchant's tale, explain the sellsword's dying words, explain why half the realm now whispers that Arthur Dayne serves the wolves." Robert's dark eyes blaze with the fury that once shattered Rhaegar's chest on the Trident. Either Ned is lying to me, or the entire Seven Kingdoms has gone mad with false rumors. Tywin Lannister watches this display with the cool detachment that has served him well in 4 decades of politics. "Perhaps, Your Grace, we should consider that both things might be true. Lord Stark speaks honestly when he says Arthur Dayne is dead. But that doesn't mean the knight who serves him now isn't the same man wearing a different name." The observation brings sudden quiet to the chamber. Robert turns his burning gaze on the Lord of Casterly Rock, and for a moment the tension crackles like lightning before thunder. "You're suggesting Ned harbors a traitor under a false identity? That my oldest friend makes me a fool with word games and clever lies?" "I'm suggesting, Your Grace, that men do strange things when family is involved. Lord Stark's sister died at that tower. Perhaps he felt some debt needed paying, some promise needed keeping." Tywin's golden eyes never waver under Robert's stare. Or perhaps the rumors are simply false, and we chase shadows, while real enemies gather strength. Near the chamber's back wall, Sir Jaime Lannister stands in his white cloak and golden armor, officially present as Robert's sworn protector, but truly wrestling with thoughts that threaten to tear his soul in half. At 17, he is the youngest man ever to join the Kingsguard, elevated by Mad King Aerys in one of his final acts. Now he serves Robert, bound by the same vows that once bound Arthur Dayne. The irony cuts deep. If Arthur truly lives and serves House Stark, then he has done what Jaime himself dreams of, knightly, abandoned the white cloak for something more meaningful. But Arthur was a legend, a knight whose honor was never questioned. Jaime is different. Jaime is the Kingslayer who broke the most sacred vow to save a city full of strangers. Sir Jaime, Robert says suddenly, his voice cutting through the young knight's brooding. You served with Arthur Dayne. What kind of man was he? Would he abandon his post to serve former enemies? The question lands like a physical blow. Jaime straightens, forcing his face into the mask of cool competence he has perfected since taking the white. Arthur was complicated, Your Grace, utterly loyal to his concept of duty, but that concept didn't always align with simple obedience. Meaning what, exactly? Meaning he served the king's family, not necessarily the king himself. If he believed Prince Rhaegar's bloodline continued, if he thought there was still something worth protecting. Jaime lets the implication hang unfinished. Robert's face darkens further. Are you suggesting that bastard prince left a child behind? That Lyanna bore some dragon spawn before she died? I suggest nothing, Your Grace. I merely answer your question about Arthur's character. But even as Jaime speaks the careful words, his mind races through possibilities. Lyanna Stark died in childbed. Every report agrees on that. If she bore Rhaegar's child, if Arthur survived to protect it, the political implications stagger him. A Targaryen heir hidden in the north, protected by Stark honor and guest right. No wonder Robert rages like a caged beast. Send more ravens, Robert commands, his voice deadly quiet now that the first fury has passed. To every lord who fought beside me, to every house that owes me loyalty, I want Arthur Dayne found and brought before me in chains. I want answers about what happened at that tower, what promises were made, what prices were paid. And Lord Stark, Pycelle asks nervously, gets one final chance to tell me the truth. Send word that I'm riding north with a small company. Not an army, not yet. Just enough men to ensure my safety, while I have a conversation with my oldest friend. Robert's smile is sharp as broken glass. If Ned has nothing to hide, he'll welcome his king with open arms. If he's protecting my enemies, the threat needs no completion. Every man in the chamber understands what comes next. As the small council disperses and ravens are prepared for flight, the realm holds its breath. In Winterfell, a bastard sleeps peacefully while his protectors prepare for storms yet to come. In Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister calculates odds and plans contingencies. In Riverrun, Hoster Tully wonders what price his daughter will pay for her husband's honor. And across the narrow sea, in the free cities where Targaryen exiles plot their return, whispers begin to spread. The dragon may yet have 3 heads. The blood of kings may yet flow in hidden veins. The wheel of history may yet turn toward justice. But first, a king and his friend must meet on northern ground, where honor and friendship will be tested by the weight of terrible truths. The realm watches, and the ravens carry word of what may be the beginning of a second war, or the end of a friendship that once seemed strong enough to survive anything. In the great Game of Thrones, all pieces move toward an inevitable collision, and no one can predict where they will fall when the board is finally overturned. The ravens that carry words across the 7 kingdoms never sleep, and in the days following Robert's furious summons, they blacken the sky with messages of alliance and threat. The realm holds its breath as great houses weigh loyalty against survival, friendship against political necessity. Old wounds from Robert's rebellion crack open like ice in spring, and the careful peace that followed the war begins to fracture along familiar lines. At River Run, where the red walls rise above the confluence of the Tumblestone and Red Fork, Lord Hostertully receives his visitors with the careful courtesy that marks a man walking between conflicting loyalties. The great hall buzzes with tension as ravens arrive hourly, each bearing news that makes the political landscape more treacherous. Sir Brynden Tully, called the Blackfish, stands before the great hearth with a map of the 7 kingdoms spread on the table before him. At 39, he has the weathered look of a man who has spent more time in camps than castles, more comfortable with soldiers than courtiers. His grey eyes, so like his niece Catelyn's, study the parchment with the intensity of a general planning a campaign. The North stands with Stark, he says to his brother without preamble. Every house from the Wall to the Neck will answer Ned's call if it comes to war. That's 20,000 swords, maybe more. Lord Hostertully shifts uncomfortably in his chair. The years have not been kind to the Lord of Riverrun. His hair has gone grey, and his hands shake slightly when he thinks no one is watching. War, brother? We speak of our good son, not some foreign invader. Surely Robert won't move against Ned over a single knight. A single knight who served the Targaryens. A single knight who might know secrets that could shake the realm's foundations. Brynden's finger traces routes on the map. Robert's riding north with an escort, not an army, but enough men to make his displeasure clear. If things go badly, our daughter sits in the middle of it. Hoster's voice carries the weight of a father's fear. Cat married into House Stark for love and alliance both. Would you see her caught between husband and king? Brynden's expression softens slightly. I'd see her protected, and the best way to do that is to make certain Robert understands that moving against Winterfell means moving against the Riverlands as well. You're suggesting we support Ned openly, risk Robert's wrath for a man we barely know? I'm suggesting we support our blood. Cat is our daughter, our family. If Robert forces her to choose between husband and king, we ensure she doesn't have to face that choice alone. The Blackfish's voice carries the authority of a man accustomed to command. The Riverlands can raise 15,000 men within a fortnight. Combined with northern strength, that's enough to give even Robert pause. From the shadows near the hall's great doors, Edmure Tully listens to his father and uncle debate. At 16, the heir to Riverrun possesses all the quick passion of youth and little of the political calculation that marks older men. His hand rests on his sword hilt, and his blue eyes burn with the desire to do something, anything, to protect his sister. What of the other houses? Hoster asks wearily. Who else will stand with Stark if it comes to blades? Brynden consults another scroll. Reports are mixed. House Arryn will likely remain neutral. Jon Arryn won't move against Robert, but he won't support action against Ned either. The Vale stays out of it unless directly threatened. The Reach? Mace Tyrell has already sent word to King's Landing pledging his loyalty to the crown. No surprise there. They want to secure their position after bending the knee so late in the rebellion. And Dorne? Silence from Sunspear. But Prince Doran is no fool. If Arthur Dayne truly serves the Starks now, Dawn might see opportunity in supporting him. The Danes are one of their principal houses, after all. Hoster nods slowly, his mind working through the implications. So we have the north, certainly with Stark, the Riverlands likely, Dawn possibly, the Reach with Robert, the Vale neutral, and the Stormlands. He pauses. We'll follow Robert without question. Those are his own lords, bound to him by blood and victory. Bryndon's voice grows grim. Which brings us to the key question. What does Tywin Lannister intend to do? Far to the west, in the golden halls of Casterly Rock, that very question weighs heavily on the mind of the Lord of the Westerlands. Tywin Lannister sits in his solar, surrounded by the wealth that has made his house the richest in the Seven Kingdoms, studying reports from across the realm with the cold calculation that has defined 4 decades of political maneuvering. At 41, he is a man in the prime of his power, his golden hair still thick and his green eyes sharp as Valyrian steel. The brutal efficiency with which he ended the Rhaen and Tarbeck rebellions decades ago established his reputation. His role in Robert's victory cemented his influence. Now, as the realm teeters on the edge of another conflict, every great house watches to see which way the Lion of Lannister will leap. Interesting developments, he says to his brother Kevin, who stands respectfully near the desk. Robert's anger drives him toward confrontation, while Stark's honor binds him to protection of his guest. 2 immovable forces approaching collision. The king expects our support, Kevin observes carefully. Our gold brought him considerable aid during the rebellion. He'll expect the same loyalty now. Expected, yes. But is it wise? Tywin sets aside one report and picks up another. Robert is young, impulsive, prone to decisions made in anger rather than calculation. If he pushes this matter to war, you think he might lose? I think wars are expensive, destructive, and unpredictable. The last one left thousands dead, and the realm's stability hanging by a thread. Another so soon could shatter the peace entirely. Tywin's voice grows thoughtful. But there are opportunities in chaos for those wise enough to recognize them. Kevin waits silently. His brother's mind works like a master's chess game, always 3 moves ahead of his opponents. If Robert moves against Stark and wins quickly, we benefit from supporting the victor. If the conflict drags on, we position ourselves as peacemakers, essential to any resolution. If Robert loses, Tywin allows himself a slight smile. Then the realm needs new leadership, and the Lannisters are well positioned to provide it. And if Stark yields, if he surrenders this night to avoid bloodshed, then Robert's authority is strengthened, the realm remains stable, and we continue as his allies. A perfectly acceptable outcome. Tywin stands and walks to the great window that overlooks the harbour far below. The key is to avoid committing ourselves too early, while ensuring we're positioned to benefit from any outcome. Meanwhile, in keeps and holdfasts across the Seven Kingdoms, lesser lords wrestle with similar calculations. Houses that fought for Robert send messages of support. Houses that bent the knee, late or remained neutral during the rebellion hedge, their bets with careful words that could be interpreted either way. Old resentments surface like bodies rising from river bottoms. In the north, the response is swift and unequivocal. House Umber pledges their axes to Winterfell's defense. House Mormont vows that Bear Island stands with the Starks. The mountain clans send word that they remember Lord Stark's justice and will answer his call. Even House Bolton, despite their reputation for cold pragmatism, declares their loyalty to their liege lord. but it is the ravens from unexpected quarters that prove most telling. A message arrives from Greywater Watch, where Howland Reed rules the Crannogmen of the Neck. The contents are brief but significant. I remember the Tower of Joy. I remember what oaths were sworn. House Reed stands with Winterfell. Another comes from the Eyrie, though not from Jon Arryn himself. Young Lord Robert Arryn, sickly and strange but officially Lord of the Vale, sends word that he remembers his milk brother and will not forget friendship. It's a child's message, but one that carries the weight of the Vale's neutrality, and possibly more. From Storm's End comes silence, but it is a pointed silence. Stannis Baratheon sends no messages of support for his brother's position, though neither does he openly oppose it. The Lord of Dragonstone maintains the careful neutrality of a man who sees farther than the immediate crisis. As these messages cross and recross the realm, a pattern emerges. The Seven Kingdoms are not unified behind their king, despite his recent victory. Old wounds from the rebellion remain unhealed, old alliances strained by new pressures. Robert's support comes primarily from the Reach and Stormlands, houses that benefited from his victory. Opposition, real or potential, comes from those who remember the cost of the war or who have reasons to question royal authority. In Winterfell itself, Eddard reads these messages with growing concern. Each raven that arrives brings news of friends declaring support and enemies sharpening swords. The realm divides along lines that echo the rebellion's factions, but with crucial differences. This time, the cause is not the overthrow of a mad king, but the protection of guest right and the preservation of personal honor. They're choosing sides, he tells Catelyn, as they stand together in their solar, baby Rob sleeping peacefully in her arms, while Jon rests in his cradle nearby. The realm is splitting apart over a principle that should unite us. Perhaps that's why it matters so much, she replies quietly. If guest right can be violated for political convenience, if sworn oaths can be broken when they become inconvenient, then what foundation does civilization rest upon? Outside their window, Sir Orane Dayne practices his forms in the yard below, his movements precise and controlled as always. He appears unaware of the political storm swirling around his presence, but both Eddard and Catelyn know better. The former Sword of the Morning understands exactly what his survival has cost and what it may yet demand. The ravens continue to fly, carrying words that may prove mightier than swords or more destructive than wildfire. The realm watches, chooses sides, and prepares for whatever storm may come. In the great Game of Thrones, all pieces move toward confrontation, and the board grows more crowded with each passing hour. The thunder of hoofbeats echoes across Winterfell's courtyard like war drums announcing the end of peace. From the battlements, guards watch as banners approach through the morning mist, the crowned stag of House Baratheon flying proud above a column of armed riders. At their head rides Robert Baratheon, King of the Seven Kingdoms, his powerful frame armored in black steel, and his dark eyes burning with the fury that won him a crown at the Trident. Eddard stands in the great hall, his hand resting on Ice's pommel, watching through the tall windows as his oldest friend arrives like an army come to siege. The irony is not lost on him. Robert rides to Winterfell as conqueror rather than guest, demanding surrender rather than seeking sanctuary. 20 years of friendship may die in the next hour, sacrificed on the altar of duty and honor. How many men? Sir Orane asks quietly from his position near the hearth. The former Arthur Dayne has shed all pretense of being merely a household knight. His violet eyes are alert, his bearing that of a warrior preparing for battle, despite the common sword at his hip. 50, Sir Roderick reports from the doorway, all mounted, all armed. Not an army, but enough to make Robert's intentions clear. And our strength? 30 men-at-arms in the castle, another 20 in the village and surrounding holdings. We could hold the walls for a time, but Roderick's weathered face speaks volumes about their chances against determined attackers. Catelyn enters the hall with both babes in her arms, Robb sleeping peacefully against her shoulder, while Jon rests in the crook of her other arm. At 19, she shows remarkable composure for a woman whose world may be about to crumble, but Eddard can see the fear in her blue eyes. "He's here," she says simply. "The king." "I know." Eddard's voice carries the weight of inevitability. "Take the children to the nursery. Whatever happens next, they should be protected. I won't hide while you face this alone." Her chin rises with Tully stubbornness. If Robert means to threaten House Stark, then he threatens the mother of Stark children as well. Before Eddard can argue, the great doors swing open, and Robert Baratheon strides into the hall like a storm made flesh. His black beard is wild with wind and anger, his massive frame filling the doorway as men-at-arms file in behind him. The King of Westeros looks every inch the warrior who shattered Rhaegar's chest with a warhammer, and his presence transforms the familiar hall into something dangerous. "Ned," Robert says, his voice carrying across the stones with deadly quiet, "my oldest friend, my brother in all but blood. Tell me I've ridden north for nothing. Tell me the reports are false." Eddard steps forward, every inch the Lord of Winterfell despite the circumstances. "Your Grace, welcome to my home. Will you take bread and salt?" "Don't!" Robert's word cracks like a whip. "Don't offer me guest right when you harbour my enemies beneath your roof. Don't speak to me of hospitality when you've made a mockery of friendship and loyalty both." The hall falls silent, except for the sound of steel shifting as Robert's men adjust their positions. These are not mere guards, but seasoned warriors, veterans of the rebellion who followed their king through battle and triumph. Their eyes miss nothing: the positions of Winterfell's defenders, the exits and entrances, the tactical advantages of the ancient hall. "I harbour no enemies here," Eddard says carefully. "Only those who have sworn themselves to my service." "Your service?" Robert's laugh is harsh and bitter. "Arthur Dayne serves you now. The Sword of the Morning kneels to the wolves of the north. Arthur Dayne died at the Tower of Joy. You have my word on this." "Your word." Robert's voice drops to a whisper that somehow carries more menace than shouting. "Your word, which once meant more to me than gold or glory. What is it worth now, Ned? What value does your honor carry when you lie to my face?" From his position near the hearth, Owain steps forward with fluid grace. Every eye in the hall turns to him as he moves into the light, and Robert's face goes pale as he sees the violet eyes and sharp features that mark him unmistakably as a Dane of Starfall. "Your Grace," Owain says with a formal bow, "I am Sir Owain Dayne, sworn sword to Lord Stark. If you seek Arthur Dayne, I fear you'll find only his memory here." Robert stares at him for a long moment, his dark eyes taking in every detail. "Clever. Very clever. A new name for an old legend. Do you think me a fool, sir? Do you believe I cannot recognize the greatest knight of his generation? I believe, Your Grace, that you see what you expect to see. A man's name and deeds die with him. What remains is only what he chooses to become." The king's hand moves to his warhammer's haft, the same weapon that ended Rhaegar Targaryen's line at the Trident. "Pretty words, but words nonetheless. I want answers, and I'll have them. Starting with why the legendary Arthur Dayne serves as a household knight instead of rotting in a grave where he belongs. Because Lord Stark offered sanctuary to a knight in need, Owain replies calmly. Because honor demanded protection of those who seek it honestly. Honor. Robert's voice rises like thunder. You speak to me of honor while serving the enemies of your rightful king? While hiding under false names and pretty lies? I serve no enemy, your grace. Only a man who showed mercy when justice might have demanded death. The tension in the hall draws tighter than a crossbow string. Robert's men shift restlessly, hands drifting toward weapons. Winterfell's guards respond in kind, their loyalty to their lord overriding the danger posed by royal displeasure. Enough games, Robert declares, his voice filling the hall with royal authority. I am your king, Ned Stark. I command you to surrender this man for the crimes he committed against the crown. Refuse, and you stand in open rebellion against lawful royal authority. Eddard straightens, his grey eyes meeting Robert's dark ones across the space between them. And I tell you, your grace, that guest right protects all who shelter beneath my roof. To violate that law would be to abandon the very civilization we fought to preserve. Civilization? Robert laughs harshly. What civilization protects traitors and oath-breakers? What honor shields those who served mad kings and dead princes? The honor that separates us from beasts, Eddard replies steadily. The law that makes men more than savages with swords. Would you have me become the very thing we fought against? For a moment, something like pain flickers across Robert's features, the memory of shared battles and mutual trust wars with royal fury and political necessity. But the moment passes, and his face hardens into granite resolve. I'll give you one final chance, old friend. Surrender Arthur Dayne to face justice, or I'll take him by force and consider you traitor to the crown. Those are your choices. There are no others. Before Eddard can respond, Owain steps between them with the quiet authority of a man accustomed to command. Your grace, there is another choice, one that preserves both honor and friendship. Robert's eyes narrow. Speak it, then, but know that my patience grows thin. Let me answer for Arthur Dayne's crimes. Let me face whatever justice you deem appropriate, and let Lord Stark remain blameless for offering sanctuary to a man who no longer exists. Owain's voice carries the weight of absolute conviction. The knight you seek is dead, but if his death will preserve the peace, then let it be witnessed properly. No. Eddard's voice cuts through the hall like a blade. I'll not see you sacrifice yourself for my honor. You've done nothing that merits death. Haven't I? Owain's slight smile carries genuine warmth. I abandoned my post. I broke sacred vows. I chose protection of the innocent over duty to my king. If those are not crimes worthy of judgment, then what meaning do oaths possess? The standoff stretches like a wire drawn to breaking. 3 men locked in a triangle of conflicting loyalties and competing duties. Around them, 50 armed warriors wait for words that might unleash the dogs of war once more upon a realm barely recovered from the last bloodletting. Then, like salvation arriving on swift wings, new horns sound from the gates. More banners approach through the morning air. The moon and falcon of House Arryn, flying above a smaller but more elegant escort. The tension in the hall shifts as all eyes turn toward the sound of approaching riders. Jon Arryn, Robert says, his voice carrying surprise and something that might be relief. What brings the Lord of the Eyrie to this frozen wasteland? Minutes later, the great doors open again to admit Jon Arryn, hand of the king and father figure to both Robert and Eddard. At his age, he carries the dignity of years and the wisdom of survival, his presence immediately changing the dynamics of confrontation to negotiation. "Your Grace," he says with a respectful bow to Robert before turning to Eddard. "Lord Stark, forgive my unannounced arrival, but I feared my presence might be needed here." "Needed for what?" Robert demands, though his tone has moderated considerably. "To prevent two sons I raised from destroying each other over matters that might be resolved with wisdom rather than steel." Jon Arryn's voice carries the authority of a father addressing wayward children. "Shall we discuss this as civilized men? Or will you make me choose which of my boys deserves my support in the war you're contemplating?" The word war hangs in the air like a curse, and suddenly all present understand exactly what stands at stake. Not just the fate of one knight or the honor of one lord, but the peace of the realm itself. In this hall, at this moment, the Seven Kingdoms balance on the edge of a blade, and only wisdom can prevent them from falling into chaos once more. The silence that follows Jon Arryn's arrival stretches like a held breath. 50 armed men and 3 lords standing frozen in a moment that could determine the fate of kingdoms. The hand of the king moves through Winterfell's great hall with the measured steps of a man who has spent decades navigating the treacherous waters of politics, his presence immediately shifting the dynamics from confrontation to negotiation. "Your Grace," Jon Arryn says again, his voice carrying the gentle authority of a father addressing wayward sons. "Lord Stark, perhaps we might discuss this matter as civilized men rather than enemies prepared for battle." Robert's massive frame remains tense, his hand still resting on his warhammer's haft, but Jon Arryn's words have clearly affected him. The rage that brought him north burns less hotly now, tempered by the presence of the man who raised him after his parents' death. "Jon," Robert says, his voice rough with emotion, "you rode hard to reach us." "Why?" "Because I feared what I might find if I arrived too late." The hand moves closer, his aged features grave with concern. "2 men I love as sons, standing ready to destroy each other over matters that might be resolved with wisdom rather than bloodshed." From his position between them, Owain watches this exchange with careful attention. The arrival of Jon Arryn changes everything, introducing a third voice that both Robert and Eddard trust implicitly. Here is the opportunity for resolution, if he plays his part correctly. "My lords," Owain says, stepping forward with a formal bow to Jon Arryn. "Lord Hand, I am Sir Owain Dayne, sworn sword to House Stark. Perhaps I might offer perspective on this matter, since I seem to be at its heart." Jon Arryn's sharp eyes study the violet-eyed knight with interest. "Sir Owain, your reputation precedes you, though the reports have been contradictory. Some say you are Arthur Dayne, risen from the grave. Others insist you are merely a cousin, bearing an unfortunate resemblance to legend. I am what I choose to be, my lord. Nothing more, nothing less." Owain's voice carries quiet dignity. "Arthur Dayne died at the Tower of Joy, his body burned and his ashes scattered to the wind. What stands before you is a knight seeking to atone for his family's perceived failures through faithful service." Robert's dark eyes narrow. "Pretty words, but I know what I see. The greatest knight of his generation doesn't simply disappear and reappear as a household sword." "Your Grace," Jon Arryn interjects gently, "perhaps the question isn't who this man was, but who he is now. What oaths has he sworn? What loyalties does he claim? What purpose does he serve?" The intervention provides exactly the opening Eddard has been waiting for. "Sir Owain has sworn himself to my service freely and without coercion. He serves House Stark with honor, protects our children with his life, and has proven his worth through deed as well as word. And what of his crimes? Robert demands. What of his abandonment of the King's Guard? What of his failure to protect Prince Rhaegar as his vows demanded? Owain straightens, meeting the king's burning gaze directly. Arthur Dayne failed in his duties, Your Grace. He allowed personal feeling to override sworn obligation. He chose to protect the innocent over serving his king. Those were his crimes, and for them he paid with his life. But you escaped that judgment. I survived to serve a new master, one worthy of the loyalty Arthur Dayne could not give to his king. Owain's voice grows stronger. I have sworn new oaths, made new commitments, chosen a new path. The failures of the past need not define the service of the future. Jon Arryn moves between them, his presence calming the tension like water on flame. Your Grace, Lord Stark, Sir Owain, I propose a solution that preserves honor while acknowledging justice. All eyes turn to the hand, waiting for words that might prevent civil war. Sir Owain, Jon Arryn continues, you acknowledge that Arthur Dayne failed in his duties to the crown. Do you accept that some penalty is owed for those failures? I do, my lord. And Your Grace, do you accept that a man might atone for past failures through faithful service to a worthy cause? Robert's jaw works as he considers the question. Around them, the assembled men-at-arms wait for words that will either send them home or plunge the realm into war. What do you propose? Robert asks finally. Jon Arryn's aged features show the hint of a smile. Sir Arthur Dayne abandoned his post and broke his vows. For this, he forfeits all claim to titles, lands and honors that once were his. The name and title of Sword of the Morning dies with him, never to be reclaimed. Owain nods solemnly. I accept this judgment. Let no man speak that name in connection with my person. Let the title remain buried until another proves worthy to claim it. Furthermore, Jon Arryn continues, as penance for past failures, Sir Owain Dayne places himself under the protection and authority of Lord Stark for the remainder of his natural life. He may never again take royal service, may never again bear arms against the crown, may never leave the north without royal permission. The terms are harsh but fair, creating a prison of honor that satisfies justice while preserving life. Robert considers them with the calculating mind that won him a kingdom. And what surety do I have that he'll honor these restrictions? Robert asks. What guarantee that he won't disappear again when it suits his purposes? Eddard steps forward. You have my word, Your Grace. As your friend, as your bannerman, as a man who has never broken faith with you. Sir Owain remains under my protection and my responsibility. Should he violate these terms, I forfeit my own honor. The weight of this pledge settles over the hall like snow. By offering his own honor as surety, Eddard transforms the arrangement from punishment to protection, creating bonds that neither man can easily break. Robert stares at his oldest friend for a long moment, searching grey eyes for any hint of deception. What he sees there must satisfy him, for his massive frame slowly relaxes. Jon, Robert says to the hand, you believe this arrangement serves justice? I believe it serves the realm, Your Grace. Wars destroy more than they preserve. Peace allows healing. Jon Arryn's voice carries the wisdom of decades. Sometimes the greatest victory is the one that requires no battle. Robert's hand falls away from his warhammer. Around the hall, armed men on both sides step back from ready positions, the tension bleeding away like water from a cracked cup. Very well, Robert declares. Let it be recorded that Arthur Dayne died at the Tower of Joy as originally reported. Sir Owain Dayne remains under the protection and authority of House Stark, stripped of previous titles and bound by the terms Lord Arryn has outlined. The formal pronouncement echoes through the hall with the weight of law. Crisis passes into resolution, conflict transforms into compromise, and the realm steps back from the precipice of war. "Your Grace," Eddard says with profound relief, "will you accept our hospitality now? Will you take bread and salt as friend and guest?" For the first time since his arrival, Robert's harsh features soften into something approaching warmth. "Aye, Ned, I'll take your hospitality, and perhaps we can speak of lighter matters than war and justice." As the household disperses and normal life begins to reassert itself, 3 men remain in the great hall. A king learning to govern with wisdom rather than wrath. A lord who has preserved honor without sacrificing friendship. And a knight who has found peace through service, freely chosen, rather than duty imposed by birth. The wheel of time turns forward, carrying them toward an uncertain but hopeful future, where Jon Snow grows safely in the halls of Winterfell, protected by northern honor and royal clemency alike. The Game of Thrones continues, but for now, the players have chosen cooperation over conquest, wisdom over warfare, and the long peace over the quick glory of victory. In the end, perhaps